Hey everyone, and welcome back to another deep dive from Ben's book summaries.
Always a pleasure to be back.
Today we're going to be taking a look at Good Energy by Dr. Casey Means.
Oh yeah, this one was fascinating.
It really digs deep into the connection between how our cells make energy and chronic disease.
It's not your typical health book.
Before we get too far into it, though, I'm curious to know a bit more about Dr. Means.
Right, so she's a Stanford-trained surgeon,
Wow.
but then she actually transitioned to functional medicine.
Oh, interesting.
And a big reason for that shift, it seems like, was her experience with her own mother,
Oh, wow.
who had chronic illness and eventually passed away from pancreatic cancer.
That's got to be tough.
Yeah, and you can tell this personal connection really shows up in how she writes the book, too.
I can imagine.
It definitely doesn't read like a textbook, which is nice.
Okay, well, let's talk about the core concept then.
Okay.
What exactly is good energy?
Basically, it all comes down to how our cells produce energy, specifically in these tiny powerhouses in our cells called mitochondria.
Mitochondria. Okay, I've heard of those.
So when those mitochondria are functioning well, we have the energy to do, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Think clearly, be in a good mood, fight off infections, all that good stuff.
It makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like the foundation of feeling good and being healthy.
So then bad energy, I'm assuming, is when those mitochondria aren't working so well.
Exactly.
Wow.
So bad energy, as Dr. Means calls it, is when our mitochondria are impaired
Okay.
and they can't produce energy efficiently.
So that leads to problems.
Yeah, and that's when we see inflammation, oxidative stress, and eventually, chronic disease.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's like the foundation of your health starts to crumble.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because Dr. Means is connecting all these seemingly unrelated problems back to this bad energy.
Exactly.
Things like depression, infertility, even heart disease.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how many things we think of as completely separate issues actually share this root cause.
It really does.
Like, for instance, she talks about a study that found this really interesting correlation.
Okay.
So they found that for every 1 unit increase in this specific blood test ratio,
Okay.
it's called the triglyceride to HDL ratio, people were 89% more likely to develop depression.
Wow, 89%. That's a huge jump.
Right.
It makes you think about good energy a lot differently.
Yeah, it's not just about feeling a bit sluggish.
Right.
It could be impacting our long-term health in pretty major ways.
So how do we mess up this good energy in the first place?
Well, Dr. Means points to 10 key factors.
Okay.
And a lot of them are probably things you've heard before, like diet,
Of course.
stress, sleep, not moving our bodies enough,
Yeah, the usual suspects.
Exactly, exposure to environmental toxins.
Oh,
She even talks about the overuse of medications
that's interesting.
as a contributing factor.
Yes.
But basically her argument is that, our modern lifestyle is just creating this environment that our cells just weren't designed to handle.
Right. It's like we're asking our bodies to run a marathon every day,
Yeah.
but fueling it with junk food and stress.
Yeah, exactly. And then we wonder why things start breaking down. She actually uses this great analogy in the book.
Oh, I love a good analogy.
She compares chronic overnutrition to constantly throwing logs on a campfire.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
at first it's cozy and nice,
Right.
but eventually it turns into this huge destructive forest fire.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
Right.
So it sounds like understanding how our lifestyle impacts our energy
Mm-hmm.
is a big part of the book's message.
Absolutely. And while she does get into the science, she makes it easy to understand.
That's so important.
Yeah, she uses clear language and she shares stories from her own practice
I like that.
to help explain these complex concepts.
That makes it a lot more relatable, I think.
Definitely, like she talks about this one patient who had chronic sinus infections.
Oh gosh, those are awful.
Right, and they'd had all these procedures and treatments, but nothing seemed to help long term.
What happened?
Well, it turned out that the root issue wasn't actually their sinuses.
Oh, wow.
It was this chronic inflammation that had never been addressed.
So they were just treating the symptom, not the underlying cause.
Exactly.
I bet a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, it's a really common problem.
And it makes me wonder, if we're missing the bigger picture when it comes to a lot of health issues.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into Dr. Means's critique of the current healthcare system.
Oh, that's something I definitely want to hear more about.
Yeah.
But before we dive into that, I want to pause for a second and talk about why all of this matters.
Sure.
Why should our listeners care about their cells' energy?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
When your cells are struggling to produce energy, it's like trying to run your car on fumes,
Yeah. Oh, not good.
right? You might experience fatigue, brain fog, mood swings.
I've definitely felt all of those.
Maybe trouble sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you're gaining weight even though you're trying not to.
Oh,
Or you're dealing with digestive issues or chronic pain.
so many things.
All of these things could be signs that your cells are basically crying out for help.
So it's not just about feeling a bit tired.
No, not at all.
It can impact our mental and emotional health, too.
Exactly.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, no.
Dr. Means argues that this bad energy is at the root of so many chronic health issues that we see today.
I'm ready to hear more about those.
Yeah.
But first, we need to take a quick break.
It's really amazing how Dr. Means connects these tiny little mitochondria to some of the biggest health problems we face today.
Yeah, it really makes you rethink how we view these conditions.
Definitely, like we tend to think of them as separate issues.
Right.
But what if there's this underlying energy crisis that's fueling a lot of them?
It's a whole new way of looking at things.
Yeah, and she doesn't just, throw out theories or anything.
Right.
She backs it up with research and patient stories.
That's good.
Like, for example, she talks about how common it is to see obese men with really low sperm counts.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty shocking.
Yeah.
But it's a really clear example of how metabolic dysfunction can affect every part of our biology.
Even fertility.
Even fertility.
Oh.
Yeah. And speaking of unexpected connections,
Okay.
I remember being really struck by her discussion of PCOS.
Polycystic ovary syndrome. Yeah, that affects so many women.
It does.
And it often feels like they're just given these Band-Aid solutions.
Right.
Without really addressing the root cause.
And that's exactly what Dr. Means is arguing against.
Okay.
She thinks that a lot of those PCOS symptoms, like irregular periods, weight gain, acne, even mood swings,
Oh, wow.
can be traced back to this underlying energy dysfunction.
It's all connected.
Yeah, so she believes that addressing those problems at the cellular level is key to really resolving the issue.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how many people are just living with these chronic conditions
Right.
and thinking that's just their life,
Yeah,
when maybe there is a way to actually fix the root cause.
absolutely. And that leads us right into Dr. Means' critique of the healthcare system.
Okay, this is what I've been waiting for.
She doesn't hold back.
Lay it on me.
She really calls out how it often fails to address these underlying metabolic issues.
That's a bold statement coming from a doctor.
Yeah, but she's been a part of that system,
That's true.
so she's seen it firsthand.
What are some of the key things she brings up?
Well, she argues that the system is really set up to treat symptoms,
Okay.
not root causes.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, and she uses the term comorbidities a lot.
Comorbidities.
You know when people have multiple health conditions at the same time?
Oh, right. Like someone with diabetes might also have high blood pressure.
Exactly. Or someone struggling with obesity might also be dealing with depression.
Right.
And her point is that instead of trying to figure out if there's a common thread connecting those conditions,
Yeah.
the system just throws a different medication at each one.
It's like putting out individual fires
Right.
without acknowledging the bigger forest fire raging underneath.
That's such a great way to put it.
I'm full of them.
And she argues that this approach, it's not only, keeping people stuck in this cycle of medication and symptom management,
Yeah.
but it's also incredibly expensive.
It's a system designed to keep people coming back for more,
Exactly.
not actually getting them well.
And she's not afraid to call out the incentives that are driving that system.
Oh, like what?
The pharmaceutical companies, the insurance companies,
Mhm.
even sometimes the doctors themselves who are rewarded for treating, not preventing.
It's hard to hear, but it's true.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow.
Especially when you think about how many people are suffering unnecessarily.
Right. But she doesn't leave us feeling hopeless.
Okay, yeah.
She offers solutions, ways we can take control of our own health.
Okay, I like that. What does she suggest?
One of the big things she talks about is continuous glucose monitoring.
CGM.
Yeah.
I've heard of that, but I don't really know how it works.
So basically, it gives you real-time information about how your blood sugar responds to different things,
Oh, wow.
like different foods, activities, even stress.
So you can see what's happening in your body as it's happening.
Exactly. It's like having this window into your metabolic processes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so you can see the immediate impact of your choices.
So instead of relying on those yearly blood tests,
Right.
you're getting constant feedback.
Exactly.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and that real-time feedback can be really motivating.
I can imagine.
It helps you figure out which foods work for you, what times of day you're more insulin sensitive, how stress affects your blood sugar.
It takes out all the guesswork.
Exactly.
You become the scientist of your own body.
That's a great way to put it.
I like it.
And she argues that this kind of bioobservability, as she calls it, could be the key to shifting from a reactive sick care system
Okay.
to a more proactive health empowerment system.
We've been operating in the dark for so long.
Yeah, it makes you realize how much we rely on these infrequent checkups and blood tests
Right.
when we could have access to so much more data.
And make better choices.
Exactly. It could be game-changing not just for individuals, but for the healthcare system as a whole.
That would be amazing.
Yeah,
But is that realistic?
that's a good question.
Is this something everyone can access, or is it just for people who can afford it?
She definitely acknowledges those the cost and access issues.
Yeah.
But she also believes that as the technology improves and more people become aware of it,
Okay.
those costs will come down and it will become more accessible.
It's like any new technology. Right?
Exactly.
It starts out expensive and exclusive, but then becomes more mainstream.
Yeah, and she argues that we need to advocate for policies and systems that make this kind of bioobservability available to everyone.
Regardless of their income or background.
Exactly.
It's like investing in preventative health care on a societal level,
Right.
instead of just reacting once people are already sick.
It's about empowering people to take ownership of their health.
I like that.
And that brings us to another key point she makes, which is the need to break free from this food environment that's designed to keep us sick.
You know, I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
It's everywhere.
It feels like we're bombarded with messages about food all the time.
Constantly.
What to eat, what not to eat, what's healthy, what's a treat.
Right, it's overwhelming.
It's hard to know who to trust.
And Dr. Mean's point is that a lot of those messages are coming from sources that don't actually care about our health.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
She talks about how the food industry manipulates our biology, using sugar, salt, and fat to create these hyper-palatable foods
Oh, yeah, those are dangerous.
that basically hijack our reward system.
Like they figured out the code to make us crave things that aren't good for us.
Exactly. And she used this term variable reward to describe how they do it.
Variable reward.
Yeah, so it's like, how those unpredictable combinations of flavors and
I
textures
say,
keep us coming back for more.
I get it like a slot machine.
Exactly. You never know when you're going to hit the jackpot of flavor,
So you keep playing.
even though you know you're probably going to lose.
That's a really good analogy.
Right.
So much of what we eat is driven by these subconscious cravings
Yeah.
that are being manipulated by the food industry.
And she argues that we need to become aware of those tactics and start making more conscious choices.
Even if it means resisting those tempting foods.
Exactly.
So it's not just about willpower.
No.
It's about understanding the game that's being played.
Right.
And choosing to play by different rules.
It's about understanding how food speaks to our cells, as she puts it.
I like that.
And choosing foods that send messages of nourishment and vitality instead of inflammation and dysfunction.
That's such an interesting way to think about food.
It is.
As like a form of communication with our biology.
Yeah. And that awareness is key to making choices that support our health.
Okay, so how does food speak to our cells? I'm really intrigued by that idea.
So basically, different foods send different signals to our cells,
Okay.
They can influence everything from how our genes express themselves
Wow.
to hormone production
Okay.
to immune function. It's like we're constantly having this conversation with our bodies.
Through the food we choose.
Exactly. Like she gives the example of omega-3 fatty acids.
Oh, like in fish.
Yeah, salmon walnuts.
Okay.
And those actually tell our immune cells to calm down.
Interesting.
So they reduce inflammation.
Okay.
But then on the flip side, you've got refined carbs and sugary drinks.
We're bad guys.
And those send signals that actually increase inflammation and can lead to insulin resistance.
So it's like choosing to speak kindly to your body
Yeah.
or constantly yelling at it.
It's a great way to think about it.
So where do we even begin if we want to cultivate good energy through food?
Well, Dr. Means really emphasizes the importance of whole, unprocessed foods.
Okay, back to basics.
Exactly. Like, think about what our ancestors would have eaten.
Fruits, vegetables,
Yeah, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds,
lean protein.
healthy fats. Those are the foods our bodies are designed to thrive on.
It makes sense.
And she also talks a lot about fiber, which most of us don't get enough of.
Fiber's important.
Oh, it's crucial. And she calls fiber-rich foods a love letter to our gut bacteria.
Oh, that's cute.
Right, because it helps us build a healthy and diverse microbiome.
Oh, yeah, the microbiome, that's so important.
Yeah, for everything from digestion to immunity to mental health.
It's amazing how much fiber impacts.
It really is.
And it's not just what we eat, though. Right?
No, she also talks about how we eat.
Oh, interesting.
She encourages us to tune back into our body's natural hunger and satiety cues.
So like intuitive eating.
Kinda, yeah. It's about getting away from all those external rules and restrictions.
Diet culture be gone.
Exactly. It's about trusting your body's wisdom.
I like that.
Rediscovering the joy of eating
Yeah.
and being more mindful about our food choices.
So like slowing down, savoring each bite.
Yeah, really being present with the experience of nourishing ourselves.
Because a lot of times we just eat on autopilot.
So true. We rush through meals, we're
Not
multitasking.
even tasting our food.
And when we eat mindlessly like that,
Yeah.
we miss out on those important satiety signals.
And then we end up overeating.
Exactly, and feeling disconnected from our bodies.
So being mindful is key.
It is, and that awareness extends to, choosing foods that actually support our metabolic health.
Right. So being intentional about what we're putting in our bodies.
Exactly. She gives specific guidance on things like balancing blood sugar,
Okay.
prioritizing protein and healthy fats, being mindful of how different foods affect our energy levels.
All very important things.
Yeah. And she even provides a 4-week plan in the book to
Okay.
help readers put these principles into practice.
So it's like a step-by-step guide.
Yeah, exactly. It breaks down these big changes into smaller, more manageable steps.
What makes it less overwhelming.
Exactly. She encourages people to just start with a few new habits each week. Focus on progress over perfection.
That's a good philosophy.
It's about making sustainable changes that you can actually stick with long term.
Right.
And she also really emphasizes the importance of self-compassion.
That's so important.
She knows that setbacks are going to happen.
They always do.
And she encourages us to view those as learning opportunities.
Instead of failures.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination.
Love that.
And she provides tools and strategies to help you navigate that journey.
Like what?
Things like tracking your progress, finding a support system, celebrating your successes.
All those things help.
And you know what's really interesting about this book?
What's that?
It goes beyond just physical health.
Okay, in what way?
She talks about the connection between good energy and our emotional and even spiritual well-being.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like she dedicates a whole chapter to the idea of fearlessness as the highest level of good energy.
Fearlessness, wow.
Yeah, and she argues that chronic stress and fear can be just as damaging to our cellular energy as, a poor diet or lack of sleep.
So it's not just what we put in our bodies.
Right, it's our mental and emotional state, too.
It's all connected.
It really is, and she emphasizes the importance of managing stress,
Yeah.
cultivating inner peace.
Easier said than done.
I know, but she gives practical tools for this, too.
Okay, like what?
Things like mindfulness meditation, spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones.
All good things.
Yeah, and she even talks about the potential benefits of psychedelics for healing and growth.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really holistic approach to health and well-being.
I like that.
And it recognizes that, all aspects of ourselves are interconnected.
So good energy is about more than just feeling energized.
Way more.
It's about living a life that's aligned with our values, our purpose, our desires.
Exactly. It's about feeling truly alive in our bodies, minds, and spirits.
Well, this deep dive into good energy has been incredibly insightful.
I agree.
I'm feeling really inspired to make some changes in my own life.
I think we all are.
This book has the potential to change how we view health and well-being,
I think so, too.
and I highly recommend it to anyone who's listening.
Definitely check it out.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and be sure to tune in to Ben's book summaries for more.
Always a pleasure.